So, real quick, I wanted to share a game that I found that I have decided I love for theater. I like to find board games in the stores and then repurposing them. And one of them that I found is the Awkward Storyteller, and it actually is really suitable for theater anyway. It's kind of designed to be a game that you would play with your friends at a party. And you're pretty much doing improv. So I've done it as an improv game in class, and then I've done it as a monologue writing exercise too. So the way it works is you have black cards, and then these cards are lines. And so anything on these cards would be the first line that you would say, okay, if it's your turn. And then there are white cards, and the white cards have either a word or a letter or a question mark, okay? So when you play it at the party, or as we did in class, where everybody was sitting in a circle, socially distanced, it worked out really great. I would give white cards to all the kids, except one kid would get a black card. And when I said go, that kid would turn over their black card and they would say their first line, and then they would just start talking, and they would start telling this story that's based on that first line. And then at some point, somebody in the circle says, "Excuse me, orange." And if it's a word, now that person has to incorporate that word somehow into the next sentence. So they've got a little bit of time to figure out how to work that word in, okay? But they've got to incorporate that word. They keep going, keep going, keep going, and then somebody else says, "Excuse me, C." And if it's a letter, then the very next word has to start with that letter. They don't get as much time. But the very next word has to start with that letter. They incorporate it, blah, 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 keep going, keep going, keep going. And then somebody else says, "Excuse me," and they may have a question mark. And if they have a question mark, that's pretty much a wild card. And that kid can decide what the word is, right? Outer space. So now the person telling the story has to incorporate outer space into it. Or this kid could come up with a letter, X, and now this kid has to, the very next word has to start with an X. So we did that in class, and at first the kids were really nervous because they were like, "Oh my gosh, I've got to do a monologue improv," and they felt all this pressure that they were solo. But afterwards they said it didn't feel like a solo because, yeah, they started by themselves, but each of these interruptions gave them something to build on. So it would just like be like just being in a scene with somebody else, and you yes and whatever your scene partner gives you. So that worked out really, really well. We loved that. But today I did it as a monologue writing exercise. And I gave each kid a black card and 3 white cards and said, "Don't look at it." And then take out some paper or something to write with, or you could use your computer or phone if you wanted to type on that. And I said, "Okay, now the black card is going to be the first line of the monologue you're about to write. And you're going to write that monologue in about 5 minutes. It's going to be really quick. So when I say go, turn it over, write it out, and then keep going." So I gave them about a minute to start developing this into something. And then after about a minute, I said, "Excuse me," and they flipped over their first white card. Again, word incorporated into the sentence, letter, I'm not even sure, letter, the very next word has to start with that, and question mark. What I told them to do for the question mark is, instead of them just coming up with a word, I told them they had to make the next sentence a question. So that kind of varies their sentence structure by making them do that. So after about a minute, they flipped over their first card, incorporated that in somehow. I let them keep writing. And then after about another minute, "Excuse me," they flipped over their second card, incorporated that, and I let them keep writing. And then after about a minute, "Excuse me," and they flipped over their third card. At the end of it, I wanted it to go just a little bit longer, so I gave them, I said, "Excuse me," and gave them a word that everybody had to incorporate. And so the last bit of everybody's monologues today, everybody incorporated. The word was surprise. And then after about a minute, everybody incorporated a word that started with H. So it was really fun. The kids loved it, and they were excited to read off their monologues afterwards. Some of them were kooky, and some of them were really, really well written, and I would believe they could get up on stage and actually perform these as monologues. And now I've got all these, and they wrote them in 5 minutes, which was really encouraging because some kids don't feel like they're very good writers, but this gave them just enough to build on and really helped them to practice improv individually, and worked on so many skills, and they loved it and asked tomorrow if we could do it again. So I wanted to share it with you. I encourage you to buy this. I think it was like $20. Hopefully you've got school money you can use to do that. And let me know if you come up with other games too and ways to incorporate them in theater class. Have a good one.